Mavis and Frank. It was a beautiful day on Stephen's branch line, but all was not well. Poor Rusty was sent to the works to be mended for his teething troubles, and he was now loaded on Bertram's flatbed truck to go to the works. It made Rusty feel miserable, and it made him want to go back to work. Months later, after Rusty was sent to the works, the Fat Controller came to see Flora. He told her to work with Mavis at the quarry. Flora was not happy about this. "It will spoil my shiny paintwork," she grumbled. "I'm sorry, Flora," said the Fat Controller, but you will do as I say when I say it." And he walked away. Flora was cross, and she trundled away to the quarry. But only a few miles per hour, Flora was not enjoying this. The track was bumpy, and she felt like her wheels were wobbling. "My wheels are wobbling," she grumbled. "Are we nearly there?" "We are now," said her driver, and indeed they were. At last, Flora had just met Mavis in front of her. Mavis was pleased to have met Flora. "Well," she said, "it's not the first time I've met a tram engine before," she said. Well, grumbled Flora, "at least I don't like working in dirty quarries," he said. "But no offence." Mavis chuckled. "Well, let's get to work before more delays are caused." "Agreed," said Flora, and the two agreed to work together. But by the time Flora was working with Mavis at the quarry, she didn't mind the dust she had on her paintwork, and she was loving it very well. "Well," she said, I don't think it's that bad." Mavis chuckled. Soon they took their stone trucks to the station at the docks. The workmen were pleased to have seen Mavis and Flora working together. The Fat Controller arrived. He soon went to speak to Mavis. "Your parts are warm, Mavis, so you must go for repairs." Mavis did know her parts were warm. "Well," she said, "I'd normally go for repairs at the quarry, but really at the works." "Don't worry," said the Fat Controller. You'll be back at the quarry soon enough." Mavis hoped the Fat Controller was right. Until at last, Mavis sure did go to the works to be mended. Her side plates were fitted, and she was given a new fresh coat of paint. And then she even saw Flora again. Flora also went for repairs. "Hello again, Mavis," said Flora. "I didn't expect to see you there." "Neither did I," said Mavis. "You forgot I was needed for repairs, didn't you?" "Oh, why, yes, I did," said Flora. She told Mavis that she was at the works because her side plates were dented. As you may know," she said, Billy started bumping the truck so hard that the tire came off the rails in the wrong place. Wasn't he rough with the trucks?" "Indeed," said Mavis. "You know what Billy's like with trucks. He can be silly at the best of times, but we still like him." "Exactly," said Flora, but she and Mavis still laughed. They all laughed about Billy, but Flora still found her dented side plates personal. Weeks had passed after Flora was at the works for repairs, and Mavis was still on her way to her sleep. She started waking up. Wondering what was going on. By the time she woke up, "Flora? Hello?" she said, but no one answered. Then she looked next to her. There, next to Mavis, was a long yellow engine. "Flora?" gasped Mavis. "Yes," the engine supervised. "What happened to you? You've turned into a steam engine." I know, said the engine. Dreadful, isn't it? Dreadful, isn't it? They used coal instead of special coal. I tried to warn them, but they wouldn't listen. Now I am as big as a steam engine. "Did it hurt?" said Mavis. "You'll have to change back." "It did hurt," the engine said, "and it's too late for me to change back into an engine now. I now have to suffer the consequences for being big and huge." "Oh dear," said Mavis. "You poor engine," she said. Until just then, Bowker arrived to pick up Molly. He buffered up to her and was ready. "It can happen to anyone. It can happen to anyone, my fine engine," said Molly. As Bowker laughed and pulled Molly out of the works. Mavis's mouth dropped. She now couldn't find out what happened to poor Flora right now. And then after that, Mavis was mended and was off to help on Duck's branch line. What could have happened to Flora? She said to her driver. Maybe they used magic on her, joked her driver. Why, poor Flora, thought Mavis. Just then, Mavis's driver shouted, "Look, here's Flora. She isn't really a steam engine." Mavis gulped. There was Flora in her tram engine body. She said hello, but Mavis didn't say hello back. Wait a second, she thought. That wasn't Flora at all. Of course it wasn't, you daft diesel, said her driver, but I'll tell you who it was. Please do, said Mavis. Meanwhile at the sheds, the big engines were all laughing about what Molly said to Mavis. And then I said, giggled Molly, I'll have to suffer the consequences for being big and huge. And I thought it was funny, she said. Did she see your tender? Asked Neville. No, said Molly. If she did see it, I would have introduced her to myself. That's hilarious, giggled Murdoch. Big and huge. Yep, said Molly. That's what I am, but I'm not fat anyway, she said. The three engines were about to be cross with Molly for her boastful behaviour, when they heard a familiar whistle and remained quiet. There, coming into the sheds, were Duck and Mavis. Hello, said Molly innocently. What are you two doing here? I'm ashamed of you, Molly, said Duck. The Fat Controller paid for your overhaul out of the goodness of his heart. I don't think he would appreciate you being cheeky to other engines. It was only a joke, said Molly, and then she stopped. She apologized to Mavis, but Mavis laughed. Well, she said, it's not very so often I don't go out much. It's a pleasure to meet you all. It's a pleasure to meet you all, she said. The big engines also asked Mavis about her quarry. They were all interested, especially Murdoch, who loved pulling goods trains. And then they wanted to help Mavis, and Mavis decided that she would help them. Soon, she even helped Neville with the passengers to take to the station docks, and she was also thanked by Emily and Murdoch for arranging their goods. And then there was one more engine to meet, which Mavis haven't met before. I know someone who would love to have met you, said Neville. His name is Frank. You see, said Molly, Frank has never met a quarry diesel before, and he would most likely take an interest in you. Really, said Mavis. Oh, said Neville, here he comes now. And there, coming to the sheds, was Frank. He saw Mavis and immediately met her. Pleasure to meet you, Mavis, smiled Frank. Mavis smiled. She knew she would be pleased, and indeed, they all started chatting forever until the weeks were going by. And indeed, weeks did go by. It was time for Mavis to leave and go back to her quarry. I don't really want to go, she said sadly. I'll miss you all. Well, I'll miss you, said Neville, but I think I know who you can take with you, said Molly. Frank, chuckled Murdoch. Shut up, you lot, burst out Frank. Mavis didn't laugh. Please, she said, I want something of yours to remind me of you all. And indeed, Neville's driver picked up what Mavis could really keep in touch with. There was a portrait of both Neville, Molly, Murdoch and Emily, and with them was Frank on it. How nice, said Molly. Neville's driver gave it to Mavis's driver, and when that was over, Mavis left the sheds to go back to her quarry. The engines whistled, and Mavis honked her horn. And when Mavis came back to the quarry, she knew Flora was still working at her quarry, and then Mavis immediately told Flora about Molly. But Flora was confused, and even Flora was telling Bertram about what Mavis said about Molly. The poor diesel, chuckled Bertram. She must have been out of her wheels. It's no wonder she doesn't go out more than her quarry no more. She must be out of her mind about something. Poor Flora didn't know what Bertram was talking about, but we know, don't we?